I chose to get 2 degrees from HBCU. My first attempt at grad school was at a predominantly white school. And I love my professor. Like Dr. Prescott is freaking awesome. I love Dr. Prescott. But my cohorts, eventually you get tired of having to explain everything. And and sometimes it's very frustrating being the cultural liaison for people who haven't been around people who look like me, And I think a lot of times they don't realize they have blind spots because they haven't really been around anyone like me. So like first off, I'm 6'1". So no matter what I do, I'm gonna look intimidated. I'm 6'1". Like if I just stand about the chair, I'm going to be intimidated. Like exactly. So always having to meter how I look and be conscious of my facial expressions, how much bass I put in my voice, and how much So the second tip, I say I'm gonna just go to HBCU. We call it being unapologetically Black. I don't have to apologize for it. I don't have to explain it. I am just me. And in doing that, it was, for me, the wonderful thing that I liked about it. I had highly skilled professors who looked like me, who were sitting, Dr. White resume. These guys are sitting on like major boards around the country. Dr. Foster was the chair of the National Endowment for the Art. And seeing people who look like me doing this stuff at a high level, and it gives you something to kind of aspire to. And I think the misconception that some people have is that HBCUs are pro-Black or pro-non. It is not the case. It's that we are just being us. Like we're just us. Like this is what we do. It's a thing. HBCUs were designed from the very beginning to be think tanks for Black culture, point blank. And we operate in a sphere where we don't have to worry about that other mentally draining part, because we could just be us. We don't have to worry about our demeanor and our facial inflections. And it is so difficult. And even as a Black band director, sometimes it's very difficult sitting in some of those meetings and some of them conferences, because they always pick a guy to present at a conference whose school demographics look nothing like what we look like. Your band has $150,000 operating budget. You have corporate sponsors. You have a 16-wheeler. And you're talking to a bunch of us. We just thankful that the child showed up to school. You know what I'm saying? Because, and it's like some of those things are not always, and they give good information, but it's just not applicable to our environment, because there is no tax base where some of our schools are located at. So there ain't no corporate sponsors to go engage. Like we got to sell cookies and donuts and all these other things, to try to get our things going. So when you go to the HBCU, you graduate with a certain awareness to you. And some people mistake it, especially when it comes to non-Blacks, they mistake it for arrogance. And it's not arrogance, it's confidence. I know who I am. I know who I am, and I know whose I am.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Everything Band, a podcast that features conversations with composers, conductors, and performers of music for winds and percussion. My name is Mark Connor. I'm a composer and educator, and each week I have the good fortune to speak with and share the stories and wisdom of musicians and leaders in the band community. The Everything Band podcast is a proud member of the Music Teachers Development Podcast Network. The Muted Network provides support in the form of audio-on-demand programming designed by and for music educators. You can find more information about our network at mutedpodcasts.com. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Jake Walker and Colin Peters for their contributions to the show, and especially to all of you who are listening. I appreciate your time and hope that you are finding value from these interviews. I rely on word of mouth and social media to bring the show to new listeners. If you think you know one or two people who might find these interviews useful, please let them know about it. You can also help by following me and sharing posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, help your students live up to the best that is in them through music. Hello, everyone. Two things I want to talk about before we begin. First, I recorded this episode with Glenn Eichelberger back in May of 2021, but I wasn't able to release it over the summer, and a lot has changed since we recorded the episode. First of all, Glenn has got a new job. He is now the director of bands at Stillman College, an HBCU in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and so I had to cut some pretty big chunks out of the interview to kind of make it work with his current job, and so if you hear some breaks, that's probably what that is. Secondly, I am currently seeking consortium members for a piece I am writing in memory of my nephew, Alec LaBelle, who passed away in February of 2020, just before the pandemic locked us all down. He passed away from an opioid overdose in his home in Pueblo, West Colorado. Now, Alan Mills, who is a director of bands in Pueblo at Colorado State University, Pueblo, agreed to perform a piece that I wanted to write in Alec's memory, but Alan wants to tie it together with the Rocky Mountain Commission Project and a concert with Steve Daniels going to have up commission. And I'd really like to try to encourage you all to check out the Rocky Mountain Commission Project. You can find information on my webpage. That's markjconnor.com, and it's /Alec, ALEC, or if you want to go up to the collaboration, you can. I really encourage you all to at least take a look at it. It means a lot to me, and it's very important. Okay, and so now on to the episode. Hi, Glenn.
Hey, what's going on?
So, I was just saying, we were talking that before the show, I really want to apologize for all the listeners on my behalf because I kind of kept you waiting for a while we had some technology issues, but I'm glad you're here. So, Glenn, can you introduce yourself for the listeners?
Right now I'm the band director at Park Crossing High School in Montgomery, Alabama. Originally from Miami, attended Florida A&amp University and Florida Memorial University for undergrad. And then just completed my master's at Morgan State in instrumental conducting. And also served in the Marine Corps as a basic enlisted musician.
All right, Glenn. So tell me about your origin story. How'd you get into music as a kid, and what led to you being a band director?
Oh man, that's interesting. I got in a band initially because I had a cousin that the family kind of always made me compete with. So I felt whatever he could do, I could do better. So I joined band. I guess I won because I'm a band director and he's in pest control. Did that, joined in 6th grade. Actually, I started as a trumpet player. 8th grade, I moved to trombone and I've been stuck on trombone ever since. Most of my education has been in a predominantly Black environment. So then I ended up going to started at Carroll City Middle, ended up going to Carroll City High. My junior year, I was a remedial student. A lot of people don't like when I talk about this, but I just keep it real. I was one of those kids that really struggled academically and pretty much had no ambition of going to college at all. It was like my life's plan. So my band director, my junior year in high school, pretty much threw me in a room with some college band directors and told me to audition. So I got a scholarship to Bethune-Cookman and Jackson State my junior year in high school. Still didn't plan to go to college because that wasn't in my wheelhouse. That wasn't kind of thing that was modeled in my family. And then from there, my senior year, still didn't plan to go to college, but they convinced me to apply to some schools. I got accepted to Bethune-Cookman College. I decided to take that scholarship. But my band director was a FAMU grad. Well, my band director and our student intern at the time was FAMU grads. And I guess they got tired of me wearing my I got accepted to Bethune-Cookman shirt. Because I wore it every day. It was like, look, I said I get accepted to anybody's college, and I got accepted. Then they convinced Dr. White to come down and audition me, and I got a scholarship to FAMU. Because my plan was to really just become a musician, playing in military band, and then or going to the infantry or whatever. But I didn't plan to go to college. So I gave college a try. College actually was a little bit easier than high school was, because they didn't tell me, because I was under the impression it was like high school. They give you a schedule from 7 to 3, But then it was like, oh no, you can pick morning classes and afternoon classes and evening classes. And so all my classes were done by 12, and it was great. So I got my little power nap in before band practice. Ran into some money issues, so I ended up leaving there, going to Tallahassee Community College for a bit. Well, I sat out for a little bit. I went into the military. Got out, came back for another semester at FAM, had some more money issues, and I ended up transferring to Tallahassee Community College. But I got into being a band director. That too was by happenstance, because I was a kid who didn't research majors when you applied to schools. So I applied to FAMU. I put music engineering. And they called me and said, we don't offer that major. I was like, okay. So then we offer music ed. I said, okay, I'll do music ed. And actually it wasn't it. I signed up for the major, but I wasn't really into it until band camp. We used to do a high school band camp, like an 8-day high school band camp. And I got this opportunity to sit around with a lot of the alumni that were FAMU grads. So, you had Mr. Pyfrom, who marched in the band in the late 50s. Then you had my high school band director, Mr. Chipman at the time was a high school band director, but now he's directed bands at FAMU. They marched in the 80s. Then you had Mr. McLeod marched in the 70s, and they would talk about their different experiences with being a band director and different things. So it piqued my interest. So I kind of was like, okay, let me see if I can go all in on this. And I kind of went all in on it. And then through happenstance, March some time, my time was coming to an end. I still wasn't done with school, and I still wanted to be involved with band. So I kind of started working as assistant band director at Rickards High School. That band director ended up leaving there and going to a school in Georgia. So I ended up, which was on about a 45-minute drive from Tallahassee. So I ended up going out there to help him with that. Still trying to finish school, because at that time I was at Tallahassee Community College. So trying to finish school, finish my bachelor's degree. And then I left there. A friend of mine got the opportunity, William Johnson, got the opportunity to be the band director at John C. Smith University. And he took me with him in hopes to finish school up there and be his arranger and stuff like that. Did that. But while I came back that summer to try to finish my AA degree. Me and math just aren't friends. We just aren't friends. I literally was one class short of getting my AA degree. I just couldn't pass math. It just wasn't working. So I ended up, while I was in Florida that summer trying to finish that last 2 classes, a friend of mine which was kind of interesting, because he was the drum major at Bethune-Cookman when I auditioned. But then he became the band director at my high school, like my alma mater. So he was trying to, he had been on me trying to finish school and pushing me through. But then his high school band director ended up becoming the band director at Florida Memorial. So they worked out a deal and some scholarship, and I was like, okay, well then I'll come on down and finish up at Florida Memorial. So I ended up finishing up there. While I was teaching, while I was in my last year of teaching, last year of school, when I first moved back, I got in the pool as a substitute teacher. So American High School was looking for a band director, someone who could substitute for the band director until, they found a way to open up the band. So I did that for 5 years. I built the band from 17 people to 85 by the time I was done in 5 years. And I started there. I was there for at least 2 or 3 years before I had my bachelor's degree. Then I got my bachelor's and finally paid off that money I owed so I can get it in my hand. And then after that, I decided I wanted to go to grad school the first time. It didn't work out. I don't think I was ready. Well, it wasn't a school that I really wanted to go to, and I just wasn't ready to go to grad school. I ended up going back, taking a job at a charter school. Then the district closed that charter school and ended up moving to West Palm Beach, take a middle school gig, which I was kind of glad. It was the right timing in my life, because not too long after I took the job, my great aunt died, and then my mom died the following month. So it was kind of good to be at middle school and have to deal with a rigorous marching band, while you're trying to deal with something like that. But I had fun. I mean, it was fun, man. It was the funnest 2 years of my life, man. I ain't gonna lie. I had fun doing middle school. I can see doing middle school again. I had fun, because it's none of that stiffness you got to be with being a high school band director. You could be a goofball, and kids love it. Did that. Then after 2 years doing that, I decided I'm gonna give grad school another time, because I was like, I'm getting old. Let me go ahead and get this master's out. So I went on ahead, applied to Morgan State, got accepted. Was there for the last 3 years. COVID messed things up, so I had to stay an extra semester because timing. We weren't prepared for it when I learned it. So I had to push my recital back. But right now I'm applying for different higher ed positions, and hopefully next week I'll know if I got one that I applied for, and just moving forward with that. I call it a great experiment. And I guess the experiment was good, because I've been a band director for quite a while. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a pretty remarkable story, actually. I mean, I don't know too much about the Miami high schools. I was only in Florida for the 4 years I was in Tallahassee. And so I didn't spend a ton of time, but I mean, I know the sort of the high schools in Miami based on like the recruiting and, the athletes that come out of there. And, so, Carroll City, does it have a reputation as being a tough school, or I mean, what was the background?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a tough school, but when I was there was a different socioeconomic makeup now than it was when I was there. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a Title I, because in Miami you have those that are like in the Overtown area, those are the more impoverished schools, but in Carroll City, Miami, Norland are a little bit. We're the suburban schools, R2 schools. So we're right there in Miami Gardens.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So at the time when I was in school there, majority of the predominantly Black school were playing grade 5 and grade 6 music, going to stage and stuff like that. So.
All right. So the other thing you said in there that I thought was pretty interesting is that you were a marine musician. So how long did you do that?
I did it for about a year.
Uh-huh.
And it did, I ended up, I guess we'll say, when I went in at 21, my body was already 10 years older than that, from being in the HBCU band. So I ended up getting out with a medical separation.
Oh, man. Okay.
My knees and my shins got shot.
So, okay. And then you ended up being a band director first in South Florida. That was your first full-time gig?
Yeah, first full-time gig is the head director. Yeah.
So tell me about that first high school gig. What was your experience like that first year? Now, we all know the first year is awful for everybody. So I always ask this question.
Well, it wasn't really that bad for me, because I had did several years as an assistant.
It's such a blessing to be able to be an assistant band director before a full band director.
And I got to try out arranging and, develop my craft and my skill sets on certain things, so that when I got into the thing, only thing I had to really get into was concert band, because I hadn't really, when I did concert band as an assistant, it was like I rehearsed the brass. Not so much not going through the process of picking literature and all that different stuff. So that part was a little fun for me, because
a little bit of a learning curve there.
Right. But I had a really good mentor at the middle school that really was an older band director at middle school, and took me under his wing and kind of showed me how to pick through music and what to look for and some stuff like that. So
I think that's a really underrated skill, is picking the right music for your groups. I think that there's a learning curve to that.
Yeah, because you got to know, when you're dealing with different grade levels, you want to know what are the good arrangers, because they're good composers for certain skill levels.
Sure.
And once you know those guys and you know your group level, you can kind of, some guys you can kind of push your envelope with your kids a little bit, but I never want to push too much where it becomes unattainable for the kids.
Yeah. So do you generally kind of stick with composers you know and trust, or do you branch out often? Kind of what's your philosophy on that?
I kind of collaborate with a lot of my colleagues, man. A lot of guys, they may suggest some pieces, and I look at them, and I'll look at the score, and I listen to a recording and see if it'll line up with my group.
Right.
My group was kind of awkward because we were a grade 5 band, but because of instrumentation, we had to play like a low 4 or 3. Because I didn't have oboes, I didn't have bassoons, I didn't have like that stuff that standalone stuff that becomes more individualized as you get into higher grade level music.
Let's use this as a way to talk to young band directors maybe. How do you know when you have a good administrator? Like if I'm a first year band director, I don't know anything. What are you going to tell me about, if I say, I don't know if my principal's good or not? What am I looking for?
I think for me, it was, out of my tenure, I've had 2 awesome principals. First, one an American who was real awesome, real supportive. But a lot of it is you got to, you can't talk to your principal like a band director. Like you got to learn the language that they use, and you have to learn the personality of your principal. Like the first principal, he was a quarterback at Florida State. So knowing that I knew football season, he's not going to want his band to look bad. He's not going to, certain things. Knowing how Florida State people are about image when it comes, especially with athletics. So I knew how to use that to my advantage. Now there was a time where there was one point where he didn't understand the cost of certain things, and I'm a little bit extra. So I put together a 14-page report for my principal on the state of the band. Because the main reason why I did that, our principal was constantly looking at district reports. So I'm like, if I can put it on black and white and use the right language, he'll understand. And once I did that, I put the current state and what we would need to get to ground zero. And with that report, he understood, and our conversation changed. Now, when it came to courses, it was a little bit more challenging, but it was workable enough where I could still build something, So, but you got to also as a first year band director, you got to know your plan. You got to know what kind of band you want to have before you get the job. And that's one thing I appreciate about my FAMU experience, because from our first semester, they pretty much tell us to think like a band director and start building our program from day one on what we're trying to be. We want a 200-piece, 100-piece band, what grade level, what kind of skill set. And because we knew where we wanted the kind of band we wanted to have, it dictated the seriousness and what classes we took, what our electives, by going to workshops, going to conferences, like who to talk to, what to ask these people, like who to surround myself with, what people I should get knowledge from. So it helps you build a tool set. So when you get into the job, you're not stressed out about what am I going to do. Now you see what your hand is, and now you know what your winning hand is at, and you just build your program accordingly, and know that it's a slow process. Some guys get lucky, inherit a 100-piece band. Some guys like me, you get all my bands I've ever had, I've had to build from the ground up. I've never had a band where I walked in and they could play. I would love to do that, but I've always had to build from the ground up. So it's just knowing where you want to go and be able to convey that to the principal, but then also making sure your vision lines up with the principal's vision. And sometimes we so focused on our vision, sometimes it'll come in conflict with the principal's vision. And I had a little period like that when I was teaching in Miami, where my vision and his vision kind of started clashing, only because he didn't understand that these things needed to be done to get his vision. So, so getting those scholarship dollars for those students, getting those performance opportunities where you're in front of the camera, where you're like in a national spotlight, you're doing different things, you're being strategic about your band image, what performance you take, how you treat your band. Like some guys, like when I take my band out of town, we stay in 3-star or above. Like that's non-negotiable. I don't care how poor we are. It's okay. And I've had parents push back on that. Oh, you're just trying to be, no, I'm trying to give these kids an experience and show them that you can have a better life. And I know, and me personally, I took that approach with dealing with a lot of my parents because a lot of my parents were underemployed. And they would, as much as they would love to take their band to go, their kid to go see the New World Symphony Orchestra, they couldn't afford $150 times 3. So when I had different opportunities to take them to an opera at a discounted price, or take like one year, my auxiliary girls, my dance squad got a Superior Estate, where I got them tickets to go to see Alvin Ailey. Just providing different opportunities beyond the music.
Well, I like to say that we're not just teaching music; we're teaching kids. We're trying to build human beings, not superior ratings.
Right, but some guys get so into the superior rating they forget that it's a person behind that clarinet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, Glenn, we met on Facebook because someone had asked a question about what do you call the marching style for the HBCU bands? And I responded to someone who, what did they called it, like boogie band or something?
Yeah.
Something that I kind of like, I was like, wait, no. But I thought it was show style, and I had forgotten it was traditional style.
Yeah.
So we call it traditional style, right?
Right, because a lot of people don't realize that all marching bands march the same way. That's why it's called traditional. That's how we all marched. And then chord came later on and all these different things. And HBCUs, we just stuck with the original marching style. We just do it with a little bit more flair, depending on what conference you're in and, what band are at what school. But it's just traditional marching style. Like, it's basically all it is, marching style.
Yeah, so now, correct me if I'm wrong. So the way I understand it is that it was William P. Foster, studied with Ravelli in Michigan. Mm-hmm. And brought that traditional style to Florida A&M. Is that am I on the right track here?
Yeah, somewhat.
Okay,
the band had they had a marching band before Dr. Foster got there. It was just in shambles by the time he got there.
So he's a legend for those who don't know him or don't know of him.
Yeah. So you have him, you have Hutchinson, you have a lot of these guys who did it for a long time, Dr. Greer over at Tennessee State, Hutchinson over at Grambling, Mr. I forgot his name. My names are escaping me in a moment. But I did a whole presentation for my history of black music class. I did a whole presentation for the origins of the HBCU band sound.
Oh, cool. So talk to us about it. Give us a little brief history.
Well, it was very interesting because the person that taught our class, Dr. Lee, is an actual composer. So in telling him and breaking down the SWAC style versus the MEAC style, or as some people say, the FAMU versus Southern style, there are some distinct origin type things because that Louisiana sound, the SWAC sound is more of a Louisiana sound, brass sound. So it's based on the bands and military bands of, growing up, whereas the MEAC sound is a more symphonic band kind of scoring and instrumentation. So when we look at the SWAC style, the number of parts are not as much as there are for the MEAC. SWAC style, you may have flute, clarinet, single parts, alto sax, single part. Then, brass, trumpets, either 1 or 2 parts, trombones, 2 parts, baritone, 1 part. Whereas the MEAC side, you may have piccolo, 2 or 3 clarinet parts, 1 or 2 alto sax parts, 1 or 2 mellophone parts, 3-part trumpet part. So you see it's a little bit, that's why the MEAC sound is a lot more lustful because it has a lot more instrumentation and how we utilize the instrumentation. We're more trying to emulate the symphonic band on the football field versus on the MEAC side. On the SWAC side, it's more about power, but not necessarily about power. It just has a very energized sound, very energetic sound. Personally. Both styles are very distinct, when you look at the regions. But for the most part, the HBCU sound kind of comes from three pretty distinct schools. You got FAM, Grambling, and Southern University. So those are the three sounds, because even you can tell the Grambling type style, SWAC style versus the Southern type SWAC style. There's some little distinct differences, but both of them are very, they all have their all merit. I love all of them. Of course, I'm a FAMU guy, so I'm gonna always be biased, because that's the sound I grew up on. FAMU Cookman, that's all I grew up on. But I have a great respect for the Southern and Grambling, that MEAC SWAC. So those two distinct SWAC styles.
Yeah, I'm looking at so are there basically two FCS conferences that I'm thinking of? I'm trying to orient myself to the SWAC and the MEAC.
Well, it's four. You have the MEAC, the SWAC, the SIAC, and the CIAA.
Okay, are they all in this? Some of them are lower division, though, right?
Well, they're all Division II, but if you were to put it like who's the higher one, the MEAC and the SWAC are the two big, the top dogs, and then you have the SIAC and then the CIAA.
I see. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure this all out, Glenn, as we're talking.
Yeah, because we do everything based off conference.
All right. So how about let's talk a little bit about style then. So you talk about the two different styles, but it's basically the same. What are someone who is not really familiar with the HBCU band culture, what are they looking at when they're looking at a show? What are sort of some of the key characteristics, would you say?
See, that's what makes it somewhat challenging sometimes, because the show design and the show creativity sometimes blends and kind of deviates from the conference style. So like you have bands like Southern. If you put Southern to watch a halftime show of Southern and a halftime show of Grambling, or Texas Southern, or Prairie View, even though they're all in the same conference, their show concept and design is a little bit different. SWAC, the typical SWAC, the basic SWAC sign is a downfield squad drill, making lines, circles, diagonals, When you have those other guys that do a little bit of pageantry in there, it's like Prairie View, Texas Southern, UAPB has been doing a little bit variations of it now. And FAMU, we do more pageantry. We do more of when I was in the band, we did more of a storytelling. Like, we're making a picture, and that picture is like, we did one formation where we formed the hourglass, and then we dropped the sand down in the hourglass, or there's a show we opened up the umbrella and then it rained. So it's like, so those things, or that's when you get, those are the more pageantry type halftime shows. And, it's a lot of it is how you create and how you put it together. It's so varied, because when you look at, there's some subtle differences. If you look at it, you wouldn't think it makes a big difference, but it does.
I think you see that even, at almost all universities. Like Ohio State marches differently than Michigan does. They have their own kind of things, and
right.
We see that. So yeah, those definitely the personality of the instructors, whoever's the drill designer doing the shows, that all comes through.
Right.
So what else? To me, I'm just fascinated by the impact of the HBCU on the rest of the band community, because I think a lot of people don't really realize just how big of an influence they have been on our profession as a whole. And I'm just wondering if you maybe can speak to that, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think a lack of a better phrase, HBCU bands are unapologetically bad. We just be us. We're playing our music. We're playing like we're just. I mean, if you be realistic, most black people have a little swag to them. They have a certain way we walk, a certain way we talk. So that's why when you put 4 or 5 HBCU bands together, you may see 4 or 5 different types of shows, but you can kind of hear some of the root similarities with a lot of them. But then you look at the bigger bands. When I was at FAMU, I was in the first 400 band at FAMU. So how we would put a show together would be totally different than Southern, because Southern was only marching 128. So it's like, so it's not, I mean, what's logic you can do with 128 people, but with us, I mean, we spelling out ghetto, putting the star, and animating the star. Like they're like certain liberties that we had when you have such a large group that, like we make cell phone and dial the number and the number shows up. Like, I mean, like, it's just certain things you can do. I mean, everyone has their own uniqueness to them and to what they bring, and everyone has their own thing that they're known for. And the thing about it, what makes it so wonderful is that it's not right or wrong. That's what Southern does. That's what FAMU does. That's what FAMU does. Like, it just, we don't. I mean, when we play each other, we knock each other, but in general, we kind of support each other for the most part. We want each other to win for the most part, except for the weeks that we playing each other. I got a lot of friends in the band that cooked me, but they knew that week we was enemies. Don't even call me, because I'm gonna talk trash the whole time we on the phone. But understanding the merit of it, I think a lot of times people don't understand the merit of what we do, and they diminish what we do. Because African culture is about dance. It's about choreography. And when people use terms like shake a booty band or cook boogie or something like that, that's quite offensive, because you're diminishing the cultural relevance of what we're doing. If you really look at a lot of our dance choreography, we're incorporating the latest dance moves that people are dancing to these songs. So it's like, it's a very well thought out, well mapped out, well planned out thing. It's not an easy thing to play an instrument while you're dancing.
No, it's surely not.
It's not an easy thing to do. And even as a high school director, when I taught in Miami, if you pull up any of my videos from Patriot Pride Amplified on YouTube, I created and taught all the dance choreography. I wrote the music and trying to find stuff that's compatible. But mind you, college kids are a little bit more difficult. They, you really have control of your limbs at that age, 19, 20, 21, like, so our dance teams I would never try to do the dance teams that I did when I was at FAMU at a high school. Because the kids just not, they don't have the stamina and the wherewithal to do all the stuff that they do. But understanding the merit and understanding the history behind each band and why they do what they do. And, a lot of these bands have a long track record of successful band programs.
There's like a touchstone there from generation to generation. You can talk to someone who graduated in 1972 and, you have a shared experience. I think that really ties it together.
Yeah, but I think also too, when you like I used to appreciate talking to the guys from the 70s and 60s, and some of the guys I may have come across in the 1950s, because you have to understand the cultural relevance of it. So, like, what I mean is, when I talked to Mr. Pyfram, he marched in the band in the 50s, where there were no hotels large enough for the band to stay, where they slept in high school gym floors, and Mrs. Foster would make sandwiches for the band, and so where the only bus company you had was Greyhound, you know what I'm saying? Versus when I was in the band, when I came through in 97, we got these nice charter buses, nice band uniforms. I mean, when you look at the 1950s, you can't tell it because it's black and white, but they were wearing ROTC. They were wearing black suits with some of the regalia from the ROTC uniforms. Like, I mean, so it's like, and knowing those cultural things, and, a lot of people don't understand, like, we talk people that was in the band in the 60s, it was dangerous for them to be on the highway. Oh, yeah. So it's like, you look at those things and it gives you a deeper appreciation for a lot of those things. And then also, too, it just looks, you can see how some things in the country that are culturally different and some things still the same. Because even when I was in a band in 2001, I've had racial slurs hurled at me. We've had racial slurs thrown at us and all these different things. Like, I mean, you wouldn't expect to hear that in 2001, but it happens. We go to certain cities we didn't like going to. We really didn't like going to, but we went because, well, for one, the band already said us we were going. But the other part about it, we went there so these high school kids can see a better way, a better life, something to aspire to.
Yeah.
So,
it worked for you.
Yeah, it did. It did, definitely did.
So, I mean, you're the proof of the pudding right there.
Yeah. But it's challenging sometimes. But now, because our HBCUs are under attack.
Yeah.
And a lot of the schools, they're shutting down their band programs or diverting funds from the band programs, and some of them they're fighting to keep the lights on. But hopefully, with this new stuff that President Biden has passed through, and some of the legislation, as much as I hate to say this, that Donald Trump passed through, our HBCUs are moving towards a more safer and more, I guess, financially solvent era, because a lot of them, their endowments don't, I mean, look at Florida State and FAMU, two beautiful campuses, but you just ask about endowment.
Oh, yeah.
Our endowment is like the change from your endowment.
Have you heard the SCORE podcast? Do you know this one?
I've heard it, but I think I might have watched maybe one episode.
It's Eric Jimenez and Justin McLean. So Justin's black and Eric is Hispanic. And Eric's the assistant band director or the band director at Prairie View.
Okay. Okay.
And Justin is teaching in a Title I school in Houston, maybe, I want to say. Something like that. But yeah, they touch on all this stuff all the time. That's their thing.
Yeah. Because I think the problem that we don't have real substantive conversations about the things that need to be fixed in the field.
No question. I'd agree with that 100%.
And that's kind of and I think that's why for me, I want to move up to the higher ed level so I can be in those rooms and have those conversations. Because my thing is, I'm at the part of my career where I'm tired of making people comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We need to fix these problems. We need to fix these problems.
I am totally with you. From my perspective, I taught college theory for 15 years, and I went back to being a band director. So I've always said, if I ever go back to higher ed, it's only going to be if I can change the curriculum.
Right. Because I think there's a lot of, and I think for me, being in Morgan State, and we were required to take a class of history of Black music. And that class was such an awakening to me because I'm hearing about composers that look like me, which I didn't know there was this big old classical movement, and all this stuff, and it, to some degree, it made me feel some kind of way, because that's why I love my professor. I love talking to Dr. Lee. Like, I can call and talk to him about anything. But he went to the University of Michigan, and he learned all this stuff. And I'm like, why are we not learning this stuff at our HBCUs in our music department? We're teaching the same antiquated dinosaur ways of teaching. And like right now with COVID-19, we're hoping that all music programs reevaluate how they're doing things. Because yes, we may be faced again where we have to teach virtually. So it's like, so it's just very, very interesting. I mean, I'm hopeful because I think the one thing I can say that I did appreciate about the whole COVID-19 thing, there were a lot of happy hours and workshops that were very multicultural, where people who don't normally get to interact with get to interact. Like I sat in one where I can talk with a band director from Las Vegas or a band director from Puerto Rico. Like, I mean, we don't really do that. There's never no environment where we can just mix and just let our hair down and just talk about real issues and have real conversations. Because I think in education, they make it so passe to talk about race and culture. But then every principal is trying to get us to teach music appreciation, but don't want us to teach about the history of it. Like I can't see talking about Motown and not talking about what was going on in America during that time. Like, I make my lessons very culturally relevant. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but like, look, I'd rather these kids have actually, because my school in Baltimore, they appreciated it because my kids were predominantly white in that environment, and we had to do a lesson on jazz. I did a simulation with them. So I told them, I said, all right, guys, we're going to pretend like it's the 1920s and you're black. And I put down the board all these jobs and careers and da-da-da. And one little girl, I'm going to be a doctor. No, you can't do that. You're black. Oh, I'm going to go. No, you can't do that. You're black. Oh, no. And then one of the kids like, man, it's very restrictive being black. Y'all say, bingo, you got it. So now they understood why now it's Black Lives Matter, but it was a little bit before Black Lives Matter started. But so they started to understand certain things and why people were feeling the way they felt about certain things. They're like, man, I'll be frustrated every day. Yes, now you can empathize. Now you understand. And I used to tell my kids all the time, ask the questions that you want to ask about my culture that you probably can't ask anyone else. And I can show you how to ask that question the right way. And, because I think that's the problem. We want the kids to learn stuff, but we're not teaching them how to ask the questions. And some of them ask me about going to HBCUs, ask me about growing up in Florida and being black. And I'm like, we had real dialogue. We talked about it. And I think that's the problem. We don't have real dialogue. Most of the time, you can't get an HBCU band director and a PWI band director in the same room to talk.
Yeah, no, it's no. I don't have much to say.
But I think the issue is our generation has started getting in positions where we're using our voices now. Because before then, we were, you 30, you 25. They're like, yeah, okay, little guy, go sit down, little guy. Go sit down. But now we're getting these higher ed jobs. Becoming music supervisors, becoming lead teachers in our districts, going into administration. So now we're like, look, let's have a real conversation and give it from the perspectives that we need to give it from. And let's have it in a safe space. Let's just talk about it. It's going to come out wrong. And I think that's the other thing about it. We don't realize we get offended when someone says something wrong, but you got to understand, they're going to say it wrong. They don't know how to ask the question. And it's going to come off offensive only because they're trying to inquire. But it's not like right now, because I already know the whole LT, I always get the letters wrong.
LGBTQ.
Yeah. That's been a thing that's going on. But I have a friend of mine that I met in grad school. She's in that community. So I asked her, I was like, look, help introduce me to this community. Because I know at some point I'm going to have a conversation. So she's had her organization had a series of workshops and stuff like that. And I'll ask the questions wrong. And they'll be like, I think I understand what you mean. And I would say, but I'm like, yeah. I said, look, because I don't want to offend. I'm just trying to really become an ally. And I need to be able to be versed in how to understand what these things are. And they appreciate it and they'll break it down to me and they'll be like, well, next time say it like so and so and so and so and so. Like, okay, boom, thanks for the heads up. Okay, boom, thanks.
Do you know, I last summer I read the book So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo. Do you know this book?
I heard of it.
Yeah, so, it's basically she's writing from the perspective of a black woman. Here's the issues. Here's what the problem is. And she says it in that book. If you're white and you ask a black person a question and they get offended, it's not, it's okay. You just ask the wrong question. They'll come around. But, you don't expect them to have to explain it to you in that moment. Don't press it. Just, so you ask the wrong question.
So we need time to process the question and take the emotions out of the question, and then be like, all right,
just like anyone else, right? Just like when one of our kids at school does something, and you know what I'm talking about, and you're like, oh, I could kill you, but you got to take that emotion out. You
gotta give it some. What do they say? Give it some sitting time.
Yeah, I mean that happens.
Revisit it.
It's this idea that we always have to have all the answers all the time. Nah, not really.
But see, from our perspective, the problem we have is there are some folks that feel they are better experts at being us because they've read it in a book or they've been to a seminar. And like, your book is never going to be the same as me living and waking up like this every day.
Yeah, and there's no way. We all have our own lived experiences. We can't be someone else or something else.
Remember your first term of teaching? Learning all the skills that you don't get taught in music school, managing a transitioning culture in your classroom, finding out that you have to teach guitar this term? During those early years, we found out that leaning on a community of music educators was important, not only for building that knowledge in ourselves, but also maintaining enough sanity to serve the students right in front of us. Amused is a podcast centered around a community of music teachers. Between the four of us, we teach choir, band, orchestra, general, jazz, and marching band at the elementary through collegiate levels. We certainly don't have all the answers, but you're welcome to listen in while we try to find them. Join us while we work through the challenges of music teaching and celebrate the joy of bringing music making into the lives of young people. In each episode, you'll hear stories, both good and bad, about that week of teaching, and we'll try and tackle an issue that one of us is struggling with. Something we're all taught is that music brings people together, but being the only teacher in your subject at a site can be really isolating. We think everyone ought to be a part of a community, and you're welcome to come join ours. Episodes come out on Wednesdays during the school year, and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at amusedcast.org.
Where do you draw the line between healthy and unhealthy competition in music?
Well, I think it's understanding the role of competitiveness. So like with my groups, most of the time, I didn't allow them to compare themselves to the next band. Because for one, their band has different sets of scenarios at their school. We have one different set. But at the same time, I still wanted to be, competitive because like we're at a competition, stuff like that. The other thing about it is the individual competitiveness, not making the competitiveness the focal point of everything, but as a gauging of where you are and where you started. So when you do the competition from that perspective, it kind of lends to not create a defeatist attitude, because you're putting the competitiveness in a more assessment mindset versus I gotta get them kind of mindset. Because now it's like, okay, all right, I lost my chair. Okay, I lost my chair because of what skill did I not master that caused me to lose my chair? Okay, all right, boom, 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 boom. And then they work on that skill, and then they're so they're keeping everybody on their toes, because at any chair, you can be safely and lose your chair. It happens. But I think some directors go about making it where it becomes a source of identity versus a source of assessment. I think when you keep it in a spirit of assessment, for one, the kid does not focus so much on not doing well. They're more reflective in not doing well. Okay, what could I have done better? And then two, when you make it so competitive, you lose the camaraderie that bands are supposed to have. Like I remember one time, me and my friends, we finally got to face off, for one. Because, one was in West Palm Beach, one was in Broward, and I was in Dade. We was at this Battle of the Bands. So we all, after the Battle of the Bands, we all lined our bands up and we went around. And the kids had a blast. We had a blast going back and forth with each other. But it wasn't, I got to get him, kill him, destroy him. No, it's more like, hey, man, let's have some fun kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So that was my take on it. I don't, of course, you want to be the best band in America. I mean, this really, but not at the sacrifice of not understanding the mindset that a kid needs to have. I think sometimes we create a negative mindset in our kids where they're so focused on winning that they're not enjoying the experience and they're not really in the moment because they're so focused on trying to destroy.
All right, so the second question, Glenn, is one that lots of band directors struggle with, and maybe it doesn't really have an answer. It's how do you find a work-life balance?
I think for me, it's only been a challenge because the majority of my career I've been single. So I really didn't need to have a balance because it's like all I got is my band and watching TV. I'm single. I don't have any kids. I don't have a wife. So it's like, yeah. For me to leave and relocate to another city, there's no variables for me. It's just like, But what I did learn is that sometimes you do have to unplug. And finding a healthy vice to unplug and do. And mine is binge watching TV. I don't drink, I don't smoke. So mine is binge watching TV or working on an arrangement or, going to a museum or go hang with friends. You just got to find, because I think we'll tend to spend so much in our professional mind that we miss out on the personal and the social parts, and that's why I got the gray hair because I learned too late about that part. So, but I've gotten better. It's just finding ways to kind of keep it and surrounding myself around people that'll pull me out the fire.
All right, Glenn, this is a big question. And just answer it the best of your ability, but what are the big challenges facing music education in band and how do we meet them?
I think the top problem is district level representation and understanding. I know a lot of my colleagues, they have music supervisors that have never been music majors, who have never been in a music classroom. And then on the flip side of that, you have some that are, and I'm not knocking course teachers, and I'm not knocking art teachers, nothing like that. But band directors have a different perspective because we have way more moving parts for our ensembles to play, perform, move, travel. We have way more moving parts. So because of that, I think we're in a better position to move and navigate some of those things to help the situation better. The second thing I would say is the unwillingness of principals to understand that the band room is a classroom. Like we have textbooks. They may not be the textbook that history's class, but our method books are textbooks. No matter how you look at it, they're textbooks. We need the same technology that everybody else have in their classroom. I want a smart board. I want a projector. When I taught at American, I still had a chalkboard. And we talking about, I left there in 2013. Understanding that if the music classroom has certain technology requirements or needs or accessibilities, they need to be fun. We need to be able to get smart music, finales, rebellions. We need to be able to implement these things into our teaching. And I think the third variable is just principals are not being taught the benefits a functioning fine arts department brings to your school politically, socially, financially, and academically. Because these are components that can get out in the community that can represent your school well. And because someone saw your theater department do a little skit somewhere, or your band, or your chorus, or your orchestra, or your drum line, they want to write a check to the school. So it's like, and I think those, to me, those are the three main barriers to avoid that, and the destructuring of feeder pattern systems in school districts. Because it's open, like my district I'm in right now, for the population that our city has, it has too many high schools. And they've taken the magnets from the traditional high schools and made them standalone high schools. And I think when you do that, no. Again, then now you got magnet middle schools that are going to magnet high schools, but then the traditional schools are getting the scraps, which ultimately leads into school grades going down, because if you take all of the cream of the crop out of the traditional school, then a good school does not a school is not a school where everyone is testing on level or above level. It is a system of all of the levels mixing in together to create a good atmosphere for learning. And I think and the other thing is scheduling too. Bands are not being afforded to schedule the way they need to schedule, and a lot of principals are trying to make band directors teach music appreciation when our degrees are not in musicology. Our degrees are in music education, where we're taught to teach kids how to be performers. So, but I think those are the main components. And I think we just don't have enough political allies to really fight for us, because I think a lot of our state music associations and our national associations, they're not using the teeth that they have. They're not using the connections, but that view comes from my activeness as a union rep for my state when I was a state delegate when I was teaching in Miami. So, and I've understood the union side of things and how we can work together to really push everybody up. But
All right, Glenn, here's my favorite question. I just invented a time machine, and I'm going to take you back to the afternoon of your high school graduation. What advice are you giving yourself?
I probably would give advice that I end up using. Just keep pushing. Just keep pushing. Like, you're going to have a lot of setbacks, but just keep your eye on the prize.
All right. So, Glenn, I don't mean this to be morbid, but just to kind of get the piece that you really kind of connect to. If you had a choice, what would be the final piece of music you'd want to conduct or listen to or perform? What would it be?
Man, there's so many I would love to conduct. But my final, like end all, like
you're gonna
die the next day.
You're gonna expire in the wings of the stage.
It would probably either be Eternal Father Strong to Save, Prelude and Rondo by Holsinger, or Festivo Overture.
Yeah, Festivo Overture is awesome.
Yeah. So it'd be out. Well, and 1,000 Cranes by Robert Sheldon.
All right. So I know you have your business, so let's promote that a little bit. Is there anything coming up that you'd like to share or promote?
Well, right now I'm doing some restructuring and some rebranding. Coming along, I was hoping to do a branch boot camp this summer, which I still may do. Just still working out some details of where I'm gonna be this summer, because I got some job offers and interviews out. But basically, I'm here to do arranging. I mean, I know a lot of guys, they don't want to write. My arrangements sound harder than what they are. Once you look at the score, you be shocked. It's very, very, very user friendly, very easy to read. I'm very mindful of the ranges, very mindful of rhythm choice. I try to keep my marching band arrangements at least between a grade 3, low 4 level. Every now and then, some parts, only because the way I am, I'm always thinking about concert band. So there may be some arrangements where I will push your clarinet and your trumpet section. I will put, because they need to have a full grasp and range of control of the instrument. So your clarinets will play the full range of the instrument if you're playing my arrangement.
If you're playing grade 3, 4, you should be the full range. My opinion.
Some guys, they keep it, but because I guess as an educator, when I'm ranging, I'm thinking about how you can use this to teach.
Yeah. And you're writing for high schools. That's a different, you're not writing for junior high or elementary band.
Right. So what I normally do, there'll be 3 clarinet parts and there'll be 3 trumpet parts. The third trumpet part is because I don't believe in horn holders. So traditionally, my third trumpet part is for my beginning trumpet players, because usually they can play between low C and A. So I kind of keep them within that range. It's usually reinforcement of the trombone or reinforcement of the mellophone part, because not everybody has mellophones. So as a reinforcement part, same thing with my third clarinet part. It's a reinforcement of the mellophone or the trombone part, or the counter melody. So they're still getting some development within the range of notes that they can play as a beginner. Because once they get over that break, it's a whole new world. But until then, that way they can still feel a part of the process. But ultimately, go moving to the actual clarinet part, and then you master it. So I try to keep it real easy, quick learn.
So you actually build in a beginner part so that bands can have a range of kids.
Yes,
I like that. I wish we did more of that.
I definitely do.
Yeah, because I think, there's a lot of kids, and we've sort of intentionally set it up this, maybe unintentionally. I don't know if I want to blame us for it, but, kids in high school don't want to start band because they feel like they're not good enough to join the band because they're hearing what their peers who have been playing for 4 years are doing. But,
right.
We want to be able to say, hey, look, there's a place for you. There's stuff you can do here.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
The trombone part is usually in 3-part harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So, mellophone part is usually 2 parts, depending on the piece. Sometimes it may be mainly 2 parts, but then there's 1 part, depending on if it's a constellation or a stand tune or a drill. I'm a little bit more flexible. I'm all about color. So, there will be some times that they will have to play trills. It may not be a lot. Because I usually put some kind of trill at the end, on the end of my drills, or Yes, you can follow me on SoundCloud, YouTube. YouTube, it's same thing. Virtuoso PC Inc. VIRTUOSO PC INC. And you can pull that up on SoundCloud, or you can pull it up on YouTube. There's some videos of previous clients and different shows that I've done and written. I tend to stick with the small band, so all of my arrangements are really written for the small band in mind. Right, but it's a special skill set to write for a small band. Mm-hmm. So no matter what your instrumentation is, if you have the basic instrumentation, the arrangement will always sound full. You don't have trombones, but you got a saxophone section, it's going to sound full. You got saxophone, or you got mellophones and baritones, no trombones, it's going to sound full. So it's all about, because I think about when I was writing for my group, I kind of took that same kind of philosophy and kind of put it on a bigger scale. So it's been like my standard style.
All right, Glenn. So how can people get in touch with you? I know you just mentioned your links, but do you have any other ways to get a hold of you?
My website, virtuosopcinc.com.
Excellent.
Contact me there. I have my pricing list, and
awesome.
I'm willing to work with any size budgets, and mainly for my Title I guys, because I know Title I guys, sometimes they need some stuff, and they may not have their budget, so I work with those guys.
Glenn, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
No problem, man. No problem.